been live streamed. Got it. Okay, so does this mean it's going straight to YouTube now?
Yep.
Julie, share the screen, dolls.
Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed.
The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Nothing about us without us. We pay respects to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and are still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all.
This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I.
And it has our fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice.
Be the voice of change in your life.
And good morning and welcome to everyone to another episode of Your Life, Your Voice. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Guler Altomas, to the program. Hi, Guler, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're keeping safe and well and rugged up in this cold day, but you might be watching this in the summer, who knows?
Yes, and today's person of interest is a friend of DD, who is a really great artist. His name is Warren, and he'll be our guest speaker today. Warren is an artist and advocate. So welcome, Warren. How are you doing?
Hi, Julie. Hi, Guler. Thanks very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this, being on the other side of the microphone, so to speak.
Yeah, so we all have different hats and different organisations, but we tend to bump into each other quite often. So it's a very small community of professionals. So would you like me to start off with some questions, Warren?
Yep, why not? Just jump in and ask anything you need to ask.
Great. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your background?
So in a nutshell, I worked in disability equipment for about 15 years or so, and worked my way up to like the state manager level for a Victorian NGO. And during the last period that I worked, I was afflicted with several minor strokes. So far, we're estimating I've had about 8 minor strokes, and over the course of probably 5 years, the last one was around 2016. So after, what I call the long dark, between 2011 and 2017, a friend put a paintbrush in my hand and my whole life changed. I was able to channel all my mental anguish into the canvas, and allowed me to actually get out and about again and meet people and do things like voice at the table. Julie and I did the voice at the table training at the same time. We're in the same group.
I think we were the first recruits to Warren for Voice at the Table.
Yeah, well, I was trying to work that out with Amy, who was the actual, like, that first cohort. I think it worked out we were the second one. There was one group before us. And but that group we were in was amazing. It was obviously yourself and myself. But we also have Bernadette up in Ballarat, who's doing all this amazing work with Ballarat Health Services. We've got Roger and Yannick, who have transformed Brain Injury Matters. They've been amazing advocates in that regard. We also had the always amazing Delia, which is very loud, very strong advocate. And yeah, of course, Anat, who I'm working with at the moment, who's a talented writer and a lot more funny than what she thinks she is. I've got a lot of time for Anat and her family. And yeah, so it was that was around 2018. I think we did that training. It was very early on in the voice at the table stuff. Since then, I've been floating around a bit, and then COVID hit, and that changed my life. But probably not in the way most people are thinking right at the moment, because everyone had to change the way they were doing things, and a lot of things went online. And for me, that meant that I could jump online and become a member of the Nimbus studio with Guler. It's a shared studio space, and when I joined, it was purely online, just because public transport between Dandenong and Bundoora is a nightmare. It would be at least a 2-hour trip to get one way, so over 4 hours both ways, and that's a bit too long. But doing it online, it's been great. I've met all these wonderful artists and just fed off their ideas and their stories and their inspirations and their information more than anything. I've learnt so much. And from there, at around the same time, Voice at the Table had to change the way they were delivering their training. And one of the ways they thought they'd be able to supplement the training, I think that's probably the best word, is via an audio podcast. So we got together. There was 3 of us essentially putting this podcast together for the first series, and it focused on what we called the 10 top tips of inclusive meeting practices. So very similar to your D&D charter there, with just basically having respect for everyone. I think that's the best way of saying most things, best way of doing most things too. So so I jumped on as the host, presenter, producer of the podcast with a couple of other people. We tried it one way the very first episode, so that's not very good, and we got rid of that very quickly. And the second episode, I think, is a much better episode, much more reflective of what we wanted to do. And yeah, so that was great, and it's still going. It's transformed a bit now due to the funding changes, as we are aware of in our disability community fields. We have to adapt what we do. Sorry. just press mute for those that missed that bit. Yeah, so we adapted the podcast content to reflect the funding now, which is all about building stronger voices. So what we tried to do is give those lesser heard self-advocates from the Voice at the Table a platform for them to share their stories. So far, we've had John T. I'm sorry, John. I love you. I just can't remember how to pronounce your name. And his amazing story of how his past sort of influenced so much of his present day, but provided him with a story very unique. And when that goes to air, everyone will just be amazed at what an amazing person this John is. And then we've heard from Larissa McFarlane and her story around disability pride, which is awesome story. And so
she's also been on our program too. Yeah, so she's in good company. Yep.
Yeah, and we've also the one that we've just finished recording is Manda Lawrence, who was also was she in our group? No, she was in the group after us, but she jumped on board with BIM, Brain Injury Matters, as a secretary and transformed a lot of the things that they were doing there. And so, but her story about what she's doing in her community now is even more fascinating than what she did with the Brain Injury Matters side of things, which is great. And just so we're trying to get some more of the lesser known advocates, self-advocates, and give them a chance to tell their story and have the ability to build a stronger voice. So, yeah.
Tell us about that. How do you make someone have a louder voice or a better voice?
Well, one of the things we do, or what I try and do, is create an atmosphere of safety and create that safe storytelling space. And it's also encouraging people along the lines that their story is interesting. And they are just absolutely amazing stories. And I just love hearing them, and I love being part of it and sharing that space and giving the person telling the story giving them permission to do what they want to do. I know it sounds a bit weird in those words, but sometimes giving permission is simple as saying, this is fascinating. You got to tell me more. It's not a direct giving permission. You're allowed to do this sort of thing. It's, yeah. One of the things that we're trying to do different this series as well, instead of having a usual working group informing the content of where the podcast is going, we're going to try and set up some safe storytelling workshops. So our graduates, instead of being co-opted into a working group, come along to a workshop and develop and receive the resources and tools needed for creating those safe storytelling spaces in their own little communities as well. So trying to help everyone the best way we can.
How do you know what's a good story?
Truth, your truth. Truth is subjective. It's not always objective, meaning that your truth is different to my truth, because your experiences are different to my experiences. Generally, though, it is just being honest with yourself and not trying to embellish the story in any way. You just tell what happened, your experience of it, how you felt, how it made you feel. And they're the best stories. They're the strongest stories. We don't need, William Shakespeare writing them for us. The stories that we have as individuals on our journey through our disabilities, but also just within life in general, are absolutely fascinating. And but I think people need to know that they're allowed to do it. It's a hard way of saying, I'm trying to pull the words out of my head. But people, I keep saying permission, but I'm not giving them permission. I'm just giving them the space. And I think that's just as important as someone saying you're allowed to do this.
Do you feel, Warren, that, and I'm trying to find the correct words also, that, look, we hear about on the media, athletes doing, incredible things, and when athletes or someone in the media, has some sort of tragedy, and that's very valid, yeah. But everyday stories like people with disabilities and self-advocates and what's the word? And their survival stories are just as important. And do you feel that when you say giving them the space, do you feel that in the past with society, perhaps family pressures, do you feel like their story wasn't believed or heard or valid or accepted?
Definitely. Definitely. A lot of, and you can hear it in some of the VAT Chat Series 1 podcast episodes where we're talking with Sue Smith from SARU, the Self Advocate Resource Unit, about the history of self-advocacy and the stories of the people involved in that. And like I didn't know anything about those people that did help shut down those horrible institutions, like the one out at Sunbury. I can't think of the name of it at the moment, but it was absolutely horrid conditions that they were living in. They were, worse than jail. And self-advocates helped get those places closed.
Yeah, we had Colin on last year.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Colin was very much involved with all of that. And yeah, so, but there was no like pretty dog in the story for the media to jump on. And by that, I mean, they weren't inspiration porn. They were just people trying to have a life. So the media couldn't jump in and give it that, those fluffy edges. And so the space is available for people with a disability to tell their stories are non-existent for a long, long time. And and it goes along with a lot of the way society views people with a disability. Obviously, there are a couple of different views about disability, and one of them is the social model of disability. So it's society that makes people disabled, not the people that make someone disabled. And that's a really bad summary of it, but you get the idea. But essentially, people with a disability have been viewed, especially in this country, as someone that should be pitied and cured. So it's very hard to have a story if people think you need to be cured, because that's all they see. And then they come along, and the only stories you do see are around those, oh, isn't so and so amazing, they're able to do this in spite of their disability. Well, I say, isn't it amazing that their disability is in spite of what they can do? Sort of thing. Turn it all on its head and look at it from the other way. And the way society portrays people with a disability is just shameful.
Which is why your voices are so important. All of our voices are so important in society, that we get to share, and people take notice of what issues are firsthand, and being disability-led kind of projects.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts online at the moment. COVID lockdown, what else can you do? What I've been really interested, has really sucked me in, has been from the UK, the Grey Eye and Disability Arts podcast, Disability and ... So they talk about a different topic each week. And almost every one of those episodes says how hard it is to be taken seriously in any aspect, because there are no serious representations of people with disability in the media or on TV, that sort of thing. There are always those inspiration porn type ones that I was just saying, where it's supposed to make you feel good.
Yeah. I think the resilience of the disability sector and lived experience is really important to highlight, because the whole world is going through now adversity. And I think that, look, I'm speaking from personal viewpoint, or things I've seen and heard and around over the last, quite a long time, is that when you have to build resilience and something awful happens, like a pandemic, who's faring the best, or who's coping the best? And I think that when there's resilience built through adversity, I think there's a lot to say about that.
Yeah,
Any comments?
I heard this quote recently, and I'm trying to remember exactly how it goes, but it's something along the lines of, the strongest people are the ones that have been brought down first and then got back up. So if you've always been at the top, always been strong, and you've never gone down, you're never going to be as strong as the person that's had to come from the bottom all the way back up. I can't remember. It was much more eloquently said than what I just did then. But it was really spot on, I thought, especially hearing some of the stories that I've been privileged to hear from the other self-advocates involved with Voice at the Table. The way they have stood up after being knocked down, and some of them several times. I mean, you've heard Eva's story recently, and how she's been basically, metaphorically knocked down, 3 or 4 times now, with physically by a car, and a couple of times by cancer as well. And so she's a much stronger person than most people are, because she's just keeps getting up and going, come on, what else you got? Come on, give me something more. And totally powering through it. Absolutely amazing person. So much time for her. And Larissa as well. She's very similar in that regard. She's been knocked down a few times and keeps getting up and keeps powering on and keeps pushing. Her and her drive is infectious. The disability pride movement is gaining traction here in Victoria, at least, if not Australia. And most of that can be attributed straight back to her. I mean, and she'll pass that off to other people as well. But
it's awesome, isn't it? Like, Warren, that,
yeah,
you know, in the disability support, like the advocates around, you know, a lot of us might be the people that use, you know, jump on their shoulders and keep reaching up, or, you know, those people that are available who we all stand on, you know,
yeah,
on important advocates. Like they're our giants, like we stand on their shoulders or vice versa. So
yeah.
it's really cool that, you know, that there's people around us that they can talk about that. And those two people you mentioned, Warren, they've been on our program, and they are awesome people and great giants to be out there and keep going for people to look up to people like that, and to also become people who are good advocates in their storytelling and their narration of what it is to be with a disability or diverse, or, you know, like there's a whole rainbow of different things happening out there and wonderful people.
Oh, yes, yes. That's, I just love that image, just right then, the rainbow of the diversity of our community and how strong they are. And I was just thinking that something Larissa and I talked about once was around the concept of leadership, and how it seems to be a dirty word within the disability community. Essentially, it comes down to it's been, people associate the word leadership and disability with those very aggressive, very loud advocates who don't really help anyone. They're just wanting to get up on their soapbox because that's their personality. But the true leaders within the disability sector, the people actually making effective change, are people like ourselves, like Julie and Guler. What you're doing with this podcast, this video podcast, is very much a leadership position, and trying to provide people with that next step up those giant ladder steps. You know, like, so we are standing on the people of like Colin and Larissa and Eva, and they've got very big, broad shoulders, but we need to step up and put our shoulders next to theirs, so that the next generation, people we don't even know yet, have an even bigger, stronger platform to build on. And, you know, so for me, a lot of it is around leaving a legacy for people we don't know yet. You know, paying it forward, I think, is the term. You know, so you never see the actual result of what you've done, but if you do everything in your power to lay those foundations, well, all of a sudden what needs to happen will happen. So, yeah.
You talked about leadership being a dirty word in the disability sector, Warren. And look, yeah, I'm not. I agree with there could be like some people out there with the with the wrong attitude. But in generally speaking, the stuff that Voice at the Table do around training self advocates to be leaders is absolutely groundbreaking. And Saru have a range of resources. We should do a program about the resources that Saru have around leadership and the resources they have on leadership. There's a whole range of box of resources and toolkits that people can use. One's online, it's Voice at the Table site, and that has a range of resources that people can look at to build their skills.
Yeah, there are great resources and tools there that unfortunately don't get seen enough, I think. I think we need to make it a bit more of a drive behind what we do when we do it, to pay back to them for everything that they've provided for us.
Yes.
Because we don't work in a bubble, that's for sure. We work in a great big bubble bath. So lots and lots of bubbles, all bouncing off each other.
Yeah, and sometimes we're standing on other people's shoulders, and other times they're standing on our shoulders, and it's a lot of what you guys have said, leaving a legacy for the future, for people who may have a acquired brain injury down the road, or illness, or some sort of motivational a resource to pick them up and help them get on with life. I think that's really important. Um, I don't have any children, so for me, it was really important to leave a positive legacy in this world. And I think one of the reasons why I really love self advocacy is that it's given me that reason. And I went through a lot of difficult times a long time ago, and part of it was depression of not doing enough in life, and that all changed. Did a is it 360? It did a full circle.
180.
180, whatever it is. My math isn't that good. and it totally revolutionised how I think about my life and what I'm leaving to the next generation.
Yeah. I think as people who have been privileged enough to receive that sort of training, that it is our responsibility to pass on that training, those learnings, and adapt them in our own way as well. Of course, that's what makes it a lot stronger, rather than just your standard, here's the textbook, off you go. It's the ability to adapt and make something your own that really makes the learnings and the resources much, much stronger.
Well, one positive from this COVID debacle is that everyone has had to adapt. And that's life, yeah. That's life. Yeah, sure, we have a pandemic, but life is all about adapting to circumstances. And you say this in your art, both you and Guler, and it came out in other presentations that now, suddenly those organisations that have received, lots of dollars for funding, now everyone's on the same platform, the Zoom platform, and it was a really interesting way to look at life as evolving. And I think, Guler, you have what do you call your art exhibitions? Go from caterpillar to butterfly. What's that word?
Yeah, chrysalis, restitution and resilience. So it's basically about gender-based violence, that particular exhibition at the Linden New Art Centre project space. Yes, that was looking at a very difficult, a woman dies or is murdered once a week, one day a week in the whole year, which is just atrocious. Like, look at what's happening, that people sweep it under the carpet. And the other recent exhibition was called Human First at the Dax Centre Gallery, and that was about looking at artists with diversity and disability and their arts practice and what messages they'd like to give to people who haven't got a diversity or a disability, whatever way you want to look at it. So it's just bringing our voices, all of our voices out there to the people and saying, these are our issues, this is what needs to be looked at, kind of thing.
Yeah, and one of the areas that I'm really interested in is in neurodiversity, and it's a very growing area, neurodiversity. So and it's very it's invisible. A lot of times it's invisible. So I think that's a really important part of artwork, is to bring out these other ways to look at life and how people interpret things in their community. There's lots of mental health related issues, especially now, but I think that mental health issues have been swept under the carpet for a long time. So as much as how awful it is, it's actually been some awareness, a lot of awareness now around mental health issues and how art can become a medium to explore these issues and raise awareness. So moving on. So what goals have you achieved, Warren? And how do you navigate around these sometimes tricky goals?
Yeah, I've not really set too many goals, so much as I'm trying to think how best to describe it. So essentially, I have lots of ideas. My brain just runs a million miles an hour. I'm sure yours does as well, Julie. Something to do with having that acquired brain injury. It just flicks a switch, and all of a sudden you got ideas, or you got nothing, or you got ideas, or you got nothing. So setting goals has been really difficult in and of itself for me, because I'll have an idea, I'll set that up as, yes, I need to do this, and then I'll have another idea and completely forget about that first one. So for me, a lot of my goal setting has been around broader terms in regards to, say, with my paintings. I've set myself a couple of broad goals, but I haven't put things like time frames on them, because as soon as I do that, I panic, I stress, and all of a sudden all the good that I'm getting out of my arts practices becomes horrid, and I don't want to do it. Just thinking back to what you were saying before, regarding the mental health issues and using art as a a very viable tool to help navigate your way through that. That's exactly what happened. I have this period in my life that I basically call my long dark. It goes for about 6 years from when I was first diagnosed as having had a stroke till about 2017, when my friend first put a paintbrush in my hand. That 6 years was basically me stumbling around in the dark, fighting against essentially the medical model of disability. Every time I went to the doctor, they gave me another pill. That pill didn't work. Oh, have this one then. Oh, that one didn't work. Have this one instead. I feel worse now. I feel suicidal and I hate it. Why are you giving me all these pills? Eventually, I just stopped with their pills. About the same time that someone put a paintbrush in my head. And it leveled me out a lot. So for me, the goals are very, very broad, and they're very much around keep painting. Doesn't matter which way you go with it, just keep painting. Explore the arts and everything it has to offer. And like I said earlier, I've been working on a project with Eva, a theatre project. Now, some of my older friends would remember that I did a couple of theatre things back at uni in the early 90s, mid 90s, whenever it was, a lifetime ago, really. And but besides that, I hadn't really spent any time in the arts world, and that period was more about the people, and that was, just hanging out with people who are there to have fun and enjoy life. So that's what we were doing. I still try to do that. I still try to hang out and have fun and enjoy life as it is presented to me now. So overall, most goals involve me having an idea, passing that idea out to the universe. So like I've got a couple of ideas at the moment. One I'm still working on, and I'll leave that alone at the moment. But another one is to set up a podcast, probably a video podcast as well, just because I want it fully accessible. So if you do a podcast just audio, it's not accessible to people who are deaf or hard of hearing. If you just do a video one and don't have Auslan interpreters and captioning, then it's not accessible to the blind and the deaf as well. So I'm really looking at all those aspects. But essentially the series of that cast would be around navigating the arts world with a disability.
That's actually what program I did, Warren. That's what Human First is all about. It's about 10 deaf and disabled artists who, which is, captioned for the, hard of hearing and for disabled people. And we had a mixture of people, like mixture of diversity and disability in the shop. But if you're ever interested, just go to my website. I've got, like 10 videos there of all the different people who are artists, and take a look at them. It might give you some ideas or something. But that's exactly what was on this year at the DAC Centre. Yeah,
I did see some of that already.
Yeah.
I think that's where some of the ideas ticked over in my head.
Yeah.
The main essence of the series is about starting from scratch. So, like, I don't know a lot about the arts world, really. I've only been actively in it for the last, 21 to 4 years, maybe. And even that is, the first year is probably nothing anyway, because I was just working out how to paint, how to put paint on the canvas, so to speak. So, so really I've only had, 3.5 years of experience in the arts world. So I don't know things like how to set up a show, how to work out what art form would suit me best. So I'm still exploring all that. And I thought, well, if I'm doing it, then there'll be other people as well. And mainly because coming into having a disability as an acquired thing, all of a sudden, I'm pushing the other side of 50, and I'm learning things now that teenagers learnt, because that's when you're supposed to learn those things in regards to art. And because I'd never actively traveled that path before. So it'd be nice to have something there, once again, for the next generation. Like, I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this for the next, and the one after that. And one of the aspects that I want to build into it is, well, I want to say training, but basically setting it up so other people can come in and run with it and take it to that next step. And then someone else comes in after that and they take it to another step. And all of a sudden you got this organic, living, breathing community based off this one sort of podcast, video cast series, which, so basically I try to set it up so I don't have to do it all the time.
Yeah. Do you think, Warren, and I've heard this quite a bit throughout life, do you think that a brain injury unlocks something in a person's brain? And like, I know that the brain can regenerate the different paths, like that people, were locked. So locked. Do you think that a brain injury like unlocks certain pathways?
I'm going to say yes. Essentially, I spent, what was it, 45 years or something, having a very logical brain, a very numbers brain, and I could spew out stats and make numbers tell a different story to what people thought they were supposed to tell. And honestly, I was never really happy. So I'm guessing there was a decision made subconsciously when I was much younger, and I probably should have gone a different way. But it was very much around not being an artist and then being an artist. There is a very definite, period of each. So there's not being an artist leading up to the injuries, the brain injuries. And then all of a sudden, the creative side of my brain that had been, as you're saying, locked, I'm saying more suppressed, so pushed down, has all of a sudden gone, hey, that bit's not working. We can go that way to get in. And all of a sudden, all this creativity come flooding out of my head. And it was confusing me. So I was very confused and didn't know what to do. And because, as you can see, I talk with my hands. I'm not Italian. I'm not any of those stereotypes or anything like that. I just have to use my hands. It helps me form the words. But apparently the way I move my hands is very painterly, so to speak. And that's why a friend put a paintbrush in my hand. But I've heard from other people with a brain injury, and that they use things like those colouring in books as therapy to soothe themselves. And I tried that. It didn't work for me, but it works for them, and that's fantastic. And then there are other stories like our friend Larissa. Prior to brain injury, she was a musician, and now, but didn't do art as such. She was a musician, so she played. She worked hard at it and played music. Had a brain injury, lost her ability to hear music, and this is how brains are really weird. So all of a sudden, music just becomes like white noise to her. It's very annoying. It's very, yeah. But other part of her brain kicked in and said, "Oh, I can now make these pictures." And she started doing her printmaking and coming up with some of the most amazing prints I've ever seen. So, yes, I think is the short answer. Yes, the brain is magical and changes the way you think and perceive the world.
So we'll move on. We've only got about 5 minutes left. Okay.
9 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to skip a few questions.
We might have to call Warren back in another session.
So I'll go on to some futuristic type of questions.
Yeah.
If you could do one thing in your life you have never done before, what would that be?
I think for me at the moment, it would be to hold that solo exhibition. Yeah, that's one of those goals that I have, those idea goals where to begin with, when I first started painting and when I first interacted with Arts Access Victoria, I said to them, I've no real interest in exhibiting. I just paint. I just have to paint. But I want to know what I'm painting, what I'm doing it for, sort of thing. And I just wanted to learn everything there was to learn. And then I got involved with the Nimbus studios as part of Arts Access and being online and that, and meeting the amazing people like Guler and Adam and Elshani and Marnie and all of them. And being part of that first group exhibition was a real change in attitude for myself, and has put forward that idea that, okay, maybe I can do a solo exhibition. Not just yet, finish off a few more pieces, and all of a sudden it could be there.
Yeah, you've got the Walker Street Gallery up your way, so have that in your dreams. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I might wait for the new gallery to be finished at Dandenong, because it'll be more accessible. Walker Street's not quite accessible. There's a bit with stairs and there's no toilet. So I volunteer in the space next door, the Connections Art Space. I'm loving that. It's a tiny space. I'm not too worried about exhibiting in there, but the people involved are just amazing. And as you can imagine, it's being here in Dandenong, it is as diverse as anywhere in the country. I'm almost I make the joke that I'm the minority within that group, because I'm sort of there's only a couple of white males. The rest are just every color of the rainbow. It's wonderful. I love it. It energizes me, and I just want to provide learnings from my privilege of being a white male to the group as best I can. And, and once again, always, creating that space for people to stand up and be better. I think that's going to be my big legacy, is providing that space for others.
So, what vision would you have for the cold people with disability in society? What vision do you have for 20 years' time?
I've been thinking about this question because Julie sent me the questions beforehand. And this one I thought about the most. And realistically, I think from my perspective, it's the same vision that I have for people with a disability in general, and that is an inclusive society. I go through it a bit more in the Museum of Us piece that I have in. Guler's in that show as well. And my piece is called What an Accessible Future Looks Like. But essentially, I'm just talking inclusion. Everything is inclusion. And the painting I did, which is an abstract painting. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that.
I'm trying to find your painting.
Yeah, I don't think there's an actual picture of it on there, unless you
isn't.
go right to the end of the video.
Okay, I'll try and do that.
Yeah, so if you go right, so you can see it just coming up there. Oh.
It's very small, isn't it? Sorry about that.
No, go scroll up a little bit.
Here we go. People see it?
I can see it. Can you see it more?
I can see it. I think there's one more. There's one more slide that's supposed to come in there and fill in those white spots.
Okay.
But essentially, the essence of it is around there's space for everyone in this society that I see. So that you've got your rainbow colours in there. You've got the different ways of seeing things. Like there's a lot about perception within my paintings. Part of my disability, or part of my brain injuries, affected my vision. I lost 30% of my field of vision. So I see things differently, and I have to move around to get the whole picture a bit. And that changes the way you see things. It changes the way you understand. And so for me, inclusion is including everyone. And it should be from the start and not from as an afterthought. So things like a great example at the moment is with the COVID, how the federal government messaging hasn't really started on the same footing for everyone. If you didn't understand English, you were left behind. And that also includes like our Voice at the Table family, with a lot, let's say half of the group has an intellectual disability. So communication and reading and things like that is very, very difficult. Even myself, I struggle to read sometimes. I'm quite articulate and quite, well-spoken and things like that, but I do struggle to recognize words at times when people are talking with me, and I also struggle to read properly. So the easy English is like a absolute godsend for me.
So Warren, before we wrap up, we've only got a few seconds to go. What is one thing that you'd like to say to our viewers? What's great about self-advocacy? Like, just give us one hint. That would be awesome.
That's a really hard one. I think for me, it is confidence. Becoming a self-advocate increases your confidence in your whole life. you feel that you are being heard, and all of a sudden you can talk. And that's vital for everyone.
Thank you.
Well, Warren, thank you so much for agreeing to be on our program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're very, very privileged to have such great advocates through Voice at the Table. We're just going to do the outro now, and that'll be the end of our program. So for everyone watching, we will be back in 2 weeks' time, and have a great few weeks. Bye.
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 Catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel live every Monday fortnight or on demand.
We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comments section.
Please feel free to email us on dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044.
Diversity and Disability is a project of the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially living through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities living